All right, welcome to Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. As usual here today, we'll have the roller coaster ride. We'll, do our Festivus celebration, our list of grievances, mainly towards Democrats today, but a little bit of Republicans too, for the little coup thing that apparently they were organizing. But then we have super fun stories, including the one.
Oh my God, I love that story so much. Look, we're gonna dunk on a real estate developer, and that's like my favorite pastime.
Yeah, the most expensive house in America. What is it and what has happened to it? You will enjoy that story. All right, forward.
All right. While money in politics continues to be a massive corrupting force among our lawmakers, equally egregious behavior includes trading individual stocks, even when these members of Congress have access to insider information. Now, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was asked about this behavior and she didn't like it. But before we get to her pretty embarrassing video on this, I do want to go to this investigation that was done by Insider in regard to the so-called Stock Act. This was legislation that was passed under the Obama administration that was meant to prevent members of Congress from engaging in insider trading, especially considering the fact that these are people who have insider information that we as ordinary citizens are not privy to. And if they're able to trade individual stocks, well, they could very easily engage in insider trading. So this Stock Act was incredibly weak. So let me just get that off the bat. However, it did force members of Congress to report their stock trades. And it didn't just include members of Congress, it also included their spouses and their staffers. So if they were making $132,552 in 2021. And if they were doing stock trades of $1,000 or more, they're supposed to report it. But did they? Well, here's what we know from this insider investigation. Insider's investigation of financial disclosures found that 49 members of Congress and at least 182 of the highest paid Capitol Hill staffers were late in filing their stock trades during 2020 and 2021. Now, lawmakers and senior congressional staffers who blow past these deadlines, they're supposed to report it between 30 and 45 days, okay, to basically disclose these stock trades. If they're late, if they blow past the deadlines established by this 2012 Stop Trading and Congressional Knowledge Act, they're supposed to pay a late fee of $200 the first time. Increasingly higher fines follow if they continue to be late, potentially costing tens of thousands of dollars in extreme cases. Now, did they end up disclosing in time? And if they didn't, were they fined? Well, based on this investigation, it seems like it ain't happening, and that the enforcement mechanisms here are weak to say the least. No public records exist, for instance, indicating whether these officials ever paid the fines. Congressional ethics staff wouldn't even confirm the existence of non-public ledgers tracking how many officials paid fines for violating the Stock Act. And also 19 lawmakers wouldn't even bother answering questions about whether they paid a penalty. 10 other lawmakers said, yeah, we paid the fines, but they declined to provide proof such as a receipt or canceled check. Now, Nancy Pelosi was asked about this investigation and whether members of Congress should be able to trade individual stocks in the first place. And her answer, I think, is to be expected. Let's watch.
Should members of Congress and their spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress?
No, I don't know to this second one. Because this is a free market and people, we are a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that.
Nancy Pelosi has done very well in the stock market, and so has her husband. And it doesn't surprise me at all that she would use this pathetic excuse of free market to essentially provide cover for what these members of Congress are doing. But make no mistake about it. This is insider trading. They have insider information, and their stock portfolios tend to outperform the overall stock market. Gee, I wonder why. Is it because they're these incredibly intelligent investors, or could it be that they have information that others don't? Cenk.
Well, most mainstream media reporters would say it's an outrageous, implication you have there, Anna. Obviously, they're brilliant. I mean, Pelosi is such a master legislator. She's probably also coincidentally a master stock picker, right? So I'm going to tell you one particularly outrageous case of what her husband did in a minute. But there's two different issues here. One is the absurd system of reporting these stock trades. So in the Senate, it's actually a little halfway better, okay? When you're late to report, they send you an email and then you have to respond, okay? Now it doesn't look like they follow up too aggressively either, but at least they have a system in place. In the House, it's a joke. They don't even track it. They say, oh, you're supposed to track it on your own out of good faith, wink. And so they don't send you an email, they don't follow up. And if you don't pay, there are no consequences. No one's ever chased down. In fact, they won't even tell the members how to pay. Members have asked, the ones that wanted to actually report themselves have asked several times, hey, what do I do? Who do I make it out to? Here, Insider did a very good job in this 5-month investigation and found Treasury can't find any of the checks. No, the House side is clearly choosing to not abide by the law. Gee, who's their leader? Oh, there she is, Nancy Pelosi. And so, and by the way, when the Republicans were in charge, they didn't abide by the law either.
Yeah, this isn't a Democrat or Republican thing. This is about corruption. This is about insider trading. This is about people who raised their hands, decided to run to become public servants, and then turn around and say, no, it's a free market. I mean, obviously, I should be able to take advantage of this role that I have to choose stocks that are obviously going to outperform the market because I'm privy to the insider information, and obviously they have control over what legislation gets introduced, what legislation gets voted on, and if they have any sense that they might regulate certain sectors of the economy that could hurt the stock value of certain companies. Well, again, that is incredibly important information that is going to have an impact on the markets. And they're going to be able to make these predictions based on that insider information. By the way, the other thing is, if they're heavily invested in a certain business, are they going to want to pass regulations that could hurt that business, hurt the profit motive for that business? Well,
that's going to bring us to Mr. Pelosi in a second. But before we go to the first dude of the House, I'm going to go to our members, tyt.com/join, and you become part of the show. You write in these great comments and we read them. So Shipwrecked Super Yacht wrote in, funny enough, how free is the market really if they use inside information to manipulate the price of stocks? And that's exactly it. That's the second gigantic issue here and the one that Pelosi's addressing. So she says, oh, well, basically all of the members should be able to buy any stocks they like. Remember, the story is about the reporting requirements. But a lot of people say, wait, you should all put it into a blind trust. Otherwise, you know exactly what to invest in. And just reporting it doesn't actually solve anything, right? So when asked about that, that's when Pelosi's saying, oh, free market, baby. First of all, that sounds like a Republican.
100%.
It's absurd to just say free market on its own. Free market how? What do you mean? In what context? In this context, part of the protection of the free market is to make sure that there are laws against insider trading. Otherwise, you don't have a free market. So a person you could ask about that is Martha Stewart. She went to prison for violating these types of rules, right? But when it comes to the most powerful people in the country, all of a sudden, prison. I mean, another member wrote in about prison. Ain't nobody going to prison.
No one's going to prison.
Fine, by the way, you can make tens of millions of dollars. The fine's $200 for just reporting late. If you report it in on time, they're like, oh yeah, stuck it. Trade anything you like, who gives a damn? We're all getting rich, baby. And there's nobody asleep at the wheel. That's why, again, whenever there's great journalism like this, I applaud it. Insider did a great job. All right, so that brings us to Mr. Pelosi. So they're about to introduce an antitrust bill against Google and some of the other big tech firms. And guess who winds up cashing out on a call option, it appears? Mr. Pelosi, the speaker's husband, but it's a tiny little amount. It appears, according to the reporting, that his profit was $5.3 million. Okay, do you have any idea what kind of bet you got to lay down to make a profit of $5.3 million? Okay, and he happened to, it appears, cash out right before they introduced the antitrust bill against Google and hold hearings. But another amazing coincidence, and we call that free market, baby.
Listen, Paul Pelosi's initials might be PP, but his investments are not small. Very big investments, huge. Yeah.
So look, in this case, look, the media is actually doing a halfway decent job. The story itself is good. She got asked a question, and now people are reporting about her absurd answer. So that's what we asked for. And in this case, not so bad from the media. It's really Pelosi and the corporate Democrats that revel and bask in this corruption.
Well, let's move on to more corrupt politicians and corrupt media. This time in the context of the Build Back Better agenda, which, as I shared with you recently, is going nowhere and is shelved in the Senate.
You know, old school's pitched to me from Jank. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? And I go, what are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong. I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck.
But what makes you stop right before 40? What makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. There's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
I heard of it. I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not f***ing, Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us.
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Easily.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies.
And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com, join, and free trial. I'm old school with the old folks.
Good
John, come back.
Politico's latest piece on this whole Build Back Better debacle provides cover for the failure of Democrats while also, nagging at progressives for having the audacity to fight just a little bit in the beginning of these negotiations. So the title of the piece is Know When to Hold and Know When to Fold. Progressives accept limits of their power.
And before you go on, can I just say one quick thing? They write pieces like this sometimes just to rub it in afterwards. When AOC let go of her top staffers, or they parted ways, who was including the co-founder of Justice Democrats, New York Times wrote a piece like this, rubbing it in like, oh yeah, what happened now? Now you know you got to get rid of your progressive allies. And this is what Politico is doing, going, oh yeah, you thought you guys were relevant? No, you're not. Shut up and know your role. And so there's going to be a lot of that in this piece.
Yeah, all right, so few excerpts that really caught my attention. First off, there is quite a bit devoted to Pramila Jayapal. She is the head of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and how she's handled these negotiations. Now, I don't know about you, Jake. I have been incredibly critical of Pramila Jayapal, especially lately after the Senate essentially announced that, now that the corporate handout bill, or otherwise known as the bipartisan infrastructure bill, has passed, they're gonna shelve the social spending bill, the Build Back Better agenda, and move on to other things, like maybe voting rights, maybe. I mean, they're not gonna reform the filibuster, so they're not really gonna reform our elections or do anything about voting rights, but whatever, we gotta give reporters something, right? Now, in it, Politico writes this: free community college, Medicare expansion, a wealth tax. Democrats tore a litany of progressive priorities out of their signature domestic policy bill, but the House left's leader, meaning Pramila Jayapal, is still declaring a win.
Yeah, sure.
And by the way, she is declaring a win. And it's honestly one of the most embarrassing things I've seen among members of Congress. No, this isn't a win. This is a massive, massive failure. In fact, we're not even gonna get the slimmed down, pared back version of that bill because she was willing to give her leverage away. Now, let me give you more. She gave herself cover for her failures, Pramila Jayapal. She says, there are always people who are like, you need to do more. And it's true, we do, Jayapal said.
But we're not going to.
But to those who ask why they can't get more done given Democrats' full control of Congress, she replied, of course, the answer is, we don't have enough control.
Get out of here, enough control. In other words, give me more power, give me more prestige. Then maybe I'll do what you want. But you know what that is? That's a Republican move saying, we're gonna hold your priorities and your bills hostage. And the only way that you could release the hostages is if you elect more Democrats. No, we already elected enough Democrats for you to have complete control. If that's not enough control for you, that isn't the voters' fault, that's your fault.
But this is an overall problem with the Democratic Party and their messaging. Well, first of all, the biggest problem is their failure in actually getting these policies passed. But in response to their failures, they think that it's a perfectly fine campaigning message to say, listen, here are all the great things we wanted to do. But even though we held the levers of power, we weren't able to accomplish those things because you need to give us more power, elect more of us, right? How are you gonna persuade people that you let down to show up and vote for more Democrats in Congress? It doesn't work that way. You have to provide actual wins. And what I'm noticing with Pramila Jayapal is despite the failure here, she's trying to kind of twist this and whitewash it, launder the failure as a big win. So let me give you more on that. After a season of intra-party flexes by her bloc, Jayapal also didn't rule out the possibility of running for leadership in a future Congress. I'm always going to be open to whatever is going to help us deliver on the boldest, most transformational agenda, and whatever role that is. And so we'll see, Jayapal said, adding she is focused on the Progressive Caucus's current work for now.
Okay, I have 1,000 things to say. First of all, is it because they're actually moving on to voting rights? Absolutely not. In fact, I have breaking news on that I'm gonna share with you in a second. They're saying voting rights because it's hard to say don't move on to voting rights. That it's a way to neutralize people on the left because then they'll pretend that they're outraged. What, you don't want us to do voting rights, right? It's total trick. Now, why do I know it's a trick? Other than the super obvious that it's always a trick. Sinema came out today and said, again, no, I am not bending on the filibuster at all. So then you can't pass voting rights.
You would need 60 senators to vote in favor of voting rights, meaning you would need 10 Republicans, or at least 9 Republicans to vote in favor of voting rights in order to get that done. It ain't gonna happen.
There are 0 Republicans that would vote for the Voting Rights Bill, for the PEOPLE Act, or anything else. So it's a lie. The fact that they were gonna come back to Build Back Better and pass the House version was always a lie. It was a preposterous lie. We told you ahead of time. The rest of the media and politicians in Washington, disingenuous, and whatever they are, corrupt folks that they are all pretending to be super surprised. Well, if you're super surprised, then you really don't know anything about politics and you suck at your job. Durbin kept saying he was stunned that Manchin is now saying that he wants to get rid of child tax credit as part of the Build Back Better. And so that issue is slightly more complicated, but basically he's proposing it in a way that would kill every other part of the bill. It would wipe out the bill completely, right? And Durbin says he's stunned by it. Well, look, he's the #2 Democrat in the House. If he's actually stunned by it, he's a grade A moron. And I actually think he is. I think he's both corrupt and stupid. I actually believe he's genuinely stunned and apparently has no idea the depth of the corruption of Manchin and all of his colleagues, even though he himself is corrupt. Anyway, Jayapal is saying that, no, it's okay, we're gonna declare a win. That is the oldest trick in the Democratic playbook. It's easy. You don't actually do anything. You just call it a historic legislation, even if it doesn't pass. In this case, it didn't even pass. It's okay, we're still calling it a win. okay? And then you get the mainstream media to kiss your ass, and this is partly this. Both rubbing it into progressives and saying, what's been done already is historic and amazing, and shut up and don't ask for anything more. And Politico obliges, every mainstream media outlet obliges, but I got news for you. It ain't gonna work.
Okay,
Not passing the bill is not winning, it's losing. You gave away all of your leverage, you were completely wrong. Please stop embarrassing yourself.
So I do want to provide two other examples of the rubbing it in, because you're absolutely right about that. And I think there were two quotes in particular that stood out the most. So the first one came from Mary Small from Indivisible. She is the National Advocacy Director for that organization. And she says, progressives can only control a slice of what happens in the entirety of the landscape of the federal government.
Yeah.
Yeah, the defeatist attitude is not what voters showed up to vote for these progressives. Like, that is not what persuaded them to vote for these progressives. Like, they had leverage, but in the final hour, they decided to give that leverage away, with the exception of, I believe, 6 Justice Democrats who voted against the bipartisan infrastructure bill.
Yeah, and they should kick Jayapal out of the Justice Democrats. She's not a Justice Democrat anymore. So yes, the 6 that voted in the correct way, we're the only ones who give them credit. The people who are pretending to be left wing, it doesn't matter how right they were, they still criticize them. They give them no credit at all. The mainstream media blames them, even though they've been proven 100% right. Take Ro Khanna's picture out. He voted the wrong way on this. Ayanna Pressley, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, and Ilhan Omar voted right. Rahul Grijalva that you're seeing there voted wrong. None of the incumbents that I helped persuade, honestly, the Just Democrats voted the right way. Turns out the incumbents were always useless. So,
can I give you one more quote? Because this is the inspiration for the whole headline, and it comes from Representative Jan Schakowsky, who says, you gotta know when to hold them and know when to fold.
Yeah, no, I agree with that quote. It's a cliche of a quote, but the time to fold is not every time.
Exactly.
And that's what progressives do. Every time. And by the way, let me be more clear. The actual progressives were the only ones who got this right. Fake progressives, whose job is to advance themselves in their own ego, i.e. leadership, we'll come back to that in a second, are the ones who say, there's nothing we can do. I mean, we said, can we please get it? Pretty please? No? Okay, right, take it out, take it all out, okay? Show me the House version of Build Back Better passing the Senate. I'll retract all of this and give you all the credit in the world. But you're never gonna do that because it's not gonna happen. We were right, you were wrong. So, Indivisible, by the way, you should ignore everything they say. And I told you this a while back, they're totally a fake group at this point. Their job is to come out and go, Nancy Pelosi's right, absolutely. Progressives say she's right. Yes, sir, absolutely, sir. Yes. They never oppose leadership. They're not actual progressives, they're a joke. So if you see them, understand their job is to be fake progressives who say leadership is always right, okay? They have a lot of these fake organizations pretending to be progressive. Okay, now the leadership question. So Jayapal is playing old politics, and I understand it. It's just totally outdated, and they don't get that it's outdated. They think we're the bad guys for telling you guys the truth. What they don't know is that a lot of you already know it. They can't trick them. So in this particular case, though, you might not know the machinations of what Jayapal is doing. She's saying, hey, I'm the head of the Progressive Caucus, and look, I'm gonna hold out and I'm gonna get some provisions in these bills, and I'm gonna look like a strong leader of one of the biggest caucuses in the House. That makes a good claim for leadership when Nancy Pelosi steps down, okay? But at the same time, I'm going to be a team player. And at the end, I'm actually not going to ask for any of those things. I'm gonna surrender to leadership and hand over almost my entire caucus to them. And that way you'll know I'm a team player, okay? And then mainstream media could come in and give me credit for folding. And that's this piece, right? Bravo, Jayapal, so smart the way she caved into us. She agrees corporate rules it kicks ass, it should be in charge. Way to go, Jayapal. And they do the cheerleading. Not going to work. Okay, it's not gonna work on 2 levels. First of all, you think they're gonna give it to you? Man, they don't know anything about politics. Pelosi was never gonna give it to Jayapal. She did that trick that I've told you 100 times that my sister did when we were kids. Well, I was gonna give you the chocolate bunny, but since you did something to upset me, I ate it. Sure, yeah, you were never gonna give the chocolate money. They were always gonna give it to Hakeem Jeffries. Why? Because Hakeem Jeffries is the most corporate, the most in favor of the donors. He will do anything for the donors, just like Nancy Pelosi. That's why he's gonna get it. It was never gonna be you, Representative Jayapal. And you think this was clever? No, you lost your progressive base, and the establishment doesn't like you anymore. They think you're a sucker. And unfortunately, this kind of proves them right. So Manchin says the child tax credit should be accounting for not just 1 year, but 10 years. And I'm not moving off of 1.75 trillion. Well, the child tax credit, if you did the accounting over 10 years, would be 1.5 trillion. So that leaves only $250 billion for every other priority. Universal pre-K, the climate change, which was supposed to be 500 billion in there. They still brag about it in this piece. Bye-bye, that's already gone. There's nothing left. And is Jayapal or any of them ever gonna stand up and go, you know what, Manchin screwed us. Manchin is the bad guy, and Manchin did it because of his donors, and so did Sinema, and so did Joe Biden, and so did Nancy Pelosi. No, of course not. They're gonna kiss their ass all day long and try to fix it with marketing. And this is not the only piece. I've now read about half a dozen pieces that say the real problem is we're not doing the proper marketing. If we just had enough pom-poms, right, we can go, yay, Democrats, and have the idiot corporate media repeat it enough times. Yes, you will convince some older Democratic voters because all they do is watch MSNBC and they get propaganda and it turns their brains into mush. But for younger voters, we are gone. Your tricks are not cute and they're not gonna work anymore. You can get mad at us all you want, but you screwed up. You didn't get any of our priorities, and that's a fact.
When we come back from the break, Joe Manchin gets real salty with a reporter asking him a simple question about what he feels about the child tax credit. We'll be right back.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT, TYT.
The place is like 95% TYT on. You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Cenk and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
The people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think, one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army, there might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
Across the map are going to be so tight and so close that it is likely going to be very difficult to call this on election night.
The twin forces behind the Biden candidacy, the billionaires and the Bolsheviks.
Arizona, 19 million. For the vice president, 9 million, a little over 9 million for President Trump.
We are desperate for Donald Trump to not be president anymore because he's fascist and is a threat to our democracy. And we said that from day one. Yes, we want Biden to beat Trump. Is that clear enough?
It is increasingly difficult for the American public to get any sort of truth.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that, people are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different waves. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights, or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry? Back on TYT. Real quick, member comment, I am Suck says, I think everyone watching Cenk's interview of Ro Khanna had a collective moment of recognition that Build Back Better would not pass. Unfortunately, that's true, and that's very observant of you. And now on a lighter note on Super Chat, Static Rich said, happy birthday to me, take my money. Okay, that's
Happy
funny.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
All right, well, let's get to some other news. Senator Joe Manchin acts like a real tough guy when he's in the Senate and he stops and serves as an obstacle to any type of social spending. But when reporters ask him about it, pudding soft, as Cenk would say. In fact, he didn't like the fact that one reporter specifically wanted to ask about his take on the child tax credit. Now, that would be part of the Build Back Better agenda, which the Senate is essentially shelving because they've given up on it. But nonetheless, Arthur Delaney asks this. I had asked if it was true he wanted the child tax credit out of the Build Back Better agenda. I've always been for child tax credits, he said. So I asked if he wants it to continue paying parents $300 a month, and he said he was not going to negotiate with me and that I'm BS. You know, there was no censorship of the curse there when Manchin said it.
It's funny that we have to censor it, but the senators don't.
Right.
Anyway, Manchin declared the situation BS and that reporter BS.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you, the reporter is not BS. That's of course true. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. One of the tricks that Manchin is doing, apparently, according to word from the negotiations, is that he's saying, look, I want the child tax credit, but I want to make it 10 years of accounting for it. And that would swallow up 1.5 out of the $1.75 trillion bill, thereby pushing out almost every other priority. Universal pre-K is gone, climate change, $500 billion is gone, almost all of it is gone. So does he actually care about child tax credit? No, he could just do the 1-year extension and still have those other priorities. He's trying to kill off the other priorities, partly because he owns a coal company and almost all of his donors are against the bill. So he's using child tax credit as an excuse.
Exactly. And you know, the fact that he owns a coal company is relevant here because there are other provisions in the Build Back Better agenda that would threaten the profits that he personally makes from fossil fuels, namely coal. And so he's never liked the social spending plan and has been against it. He's served as an obstacle for it since day one. And you know, President Joe Biden, I'm sure, is incredibly furious with this because this is Biden's agenda, which has been pared back by conservative Democratic lawmakers in the Senate, like Manchin, like Kyrsten Sinema. And so he is fighting Manchin aggressively right now by, you know, giving Manchin's wife a job that she really wants and, you know, other things like complimentary commentary during press interviews about Manchin. So that's great. Now, in a subsequent tweet, Arthur Delaney also says, everyone around here is for the child tax credit. It's a question of whether, this is what Manchin told him, it's a question of whether you want to keep paying parents as much as $300 per month. If the advance monthly payments and extra $1,600 expire at the end of the month, there will still be a $2,000 partially refundable credit. And in response to that, David Dayen pointed out something important. That $2,000 partially refundable credit is not permanent. It actually expires in 2025. And after 2025, it goes down from $2,000 to $1,000. Because we really love to support families in this country. That's really our priority here, you know?
So there's a couple other motivations here that are really important. First of all, to give you a sense of the devastation that is about to be headed in our direction, once they cut off the child tax credit, about 1/3 of all American families say they are going to have trouble paying their bills. So now, why do they want that? It's not like, oh, oops, yeah, well, you know, because I want to make my donors happy, you guys are going to have to suffer, but it's your collateral damage. No. You're not just collateral damage. They want you to suffer, not gratuitously. They have a business purpose in mind. You need to suffer enough so that you'll go back to working for lower wages. Because, oh, we got a labor shortage here. Take away everything from them. Any funding you were giving to them, take it away from them and make them miserable and dependent on corporate America again. And so that is Joe Manchin's agenda. The reason why he's so mad in this case is, and it's telling, it's because for 40 years now, people in Washington have been treated as the elites by the mainstream media.
They're never challenged.
Never, ever challenged. In fact, whatever they say is repeated 1,000 times, and mainstream media acts as their PR agents and amplifies their message as if it's true. So that is why senators like Manchin are genuinely shocked when a reporter asked them a real question. Hey, it looks like you're gonna tank the bill. And by the way, he did tank the bill. It's over. They said, oh, we're gonna go move on to voting rights. And now Build Back Better is not even on the agenda anymore. He killed it effectively. And so Durbin says, oh, we'll come back to it. I've heard that 1,000 times. They never come back to it. Have they come back to $15 minimum wage? Oh, we're coming back to it, wink. They aren't coming back to anything, okay? So when Manchin gets asked actually a relatively simple question, because they're just asking, hey, this is what you did.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us why you did it? He's in a rage over it because he's like, because he assumes you're supposed to be working for me.
Yes.
Okay? And why aren't you doing my marketing?
But there's something else that's really, really important here. That line of questioning proves that Manchin is pushing for something that's unpopular, something that is not even gonna sit well in the state of West Virginia, which he claims, it's a red state. What can I do? Because people living in West Virginia love to be neglected and abandoned by their representatives and their senators, right? They love to be abandoned and neglected when it comes to their economic needs, right? No, he knows that it's unpopular. He doesn't want to be held accountable for it. But if Biden and if congressional Democrats who claim they actually want these provisions included in the Build Back Better agenda actually campaigned aggressively in his own state and applied the necessary pressure, I think he's bendable. I think that he would end up signing off on a more robust Build Back Better agenda. But they're unwilling to do it. That's the problem. This nonsense about decorum, this nonsense about like, oh, we need unity in our party, which means we can never speak out against one of our own, even when they're fighting against our agenda. Like, it is a problem in the Democratic Party, period.
Yeah, and Anna, I realized that the people who were pre-Justice Democrats starting in 2018, the people who are in office at that point are pretty much hopeless. And Noam Chomsky and I talked about this in an interview that we did, that older generation is so thoroughly corrupt and accepts corruption as the normal state of affairs. To them, the idea of challenging a Democratic colleague for taking campaign contributions from oil companies and killing off climate change legislation, they find that so reprehensible, not the corruption, calling out the corruption. They think that's the most impolite thing that it has, and we would be all tarred and feathered and removed from the party, and it would be a violation of unity. No, we all have to lie for one another, and we all have to cover up the corruption. So they don't view that as an option. We keep asking them to do something they would never do in a million years, which is admit the corruption of one of their own.
Right.
So you need the new generation, the 6 that voted no and were right all along, to come in and say, yeah, no, they're obviously corrupt, and they should do a massive, when Build Back Better appears to be dead. So you got nothing left to lose. Voting rights appears to be dead. Now Sinema says under no circumstances is she gonna change the filibuster. Since everything is already dead, you have nothing left to lose. You should go obliterate one of them. They are very vulnerable in their home states. The polling indicates their positions are deeply unpopular. So somebody needs to go be an enforcer for progressives. Until that person steps up, we're never gonna win on any of these. The corruption will go unabated. You'll have no bills, none of the progressive priorities. What Joe Manchin said earlier, what Joe Biden said about all of his so-called agenda, it's both. He's incredibly weak and he never meant it. It was always a lie that was bolstered by the marketing of mainstream media pretending it was real.
When we come back from the break, we'll tell you about the extreme right-wing lawmakers who literally have pushed legislation that would potentially execute women who get abortions. And we'll also call out the companies that continue to fund their campaigns. Come right back.
I've been a fan of TYT, I believe, for the last 6 years.
5 years.
3 years now. 7 years.
4 years now.
2.5 years. I just started because she got me into it.
My boyfriend actually watches it every morning and every night, so I kind of just started watching it with him, and I love it. I mean, it's the only way that I find my news.
Looking through YouTube, looking for political shows that look cool.
I came across a very angry rant from Cenk, and that's when I knew.
So I was immediately in love with the show.
And then I
haven't missed a live show since then.
10 times a day, I watch the show in the morning.
Whenever I had a bad day in high school, Young Turks.
Man, Cenk is just so blunt and honest, and I love the honesty, and there's no BS behind the news, and they just tell everything like it is.
There's nobody censoring them. There's nobody there to say you can't do this, you can't say that.
That feel of authenticity makes it seem like what they're saying is true.
I feel like I get the real story from the Young Turks.
I am TYT.
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 Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk, Anna, and Kay with you. Who's Kay? Kay Height just joined.
Oh.
If you're a Young Turks member, you're one of us, and you do this show with us, and you produce it with us. She hit the join button below. You can do that as well on YouTube. Okay,
Or
everyone
he.
else
Kay could be a guy name.
could be.
Yeah.
TYT.com/join. Okay, Anna.
All right. Major companies are donating money to extreme right-wing politicians who have floated policy proposals that include the possibility of executing women who have gotten an abortion. I'm not even kidding. So there's a specific example that was revealed by excellent reporting over at TYT Investigates. Andy Hirschfield did this report, and I want to share the details with you. For instance, in Texas, Republicans have tried as recently as this year to pass bills that could mean the death penalty for women convicted of getting an abortion. So just hold on, before I give you more details to the story, just let that sink in. Just consider the irony of that. We're so pro-life that we will execute women who have abortions. So it just goes to prove the point that I've been making over and over again, that this isn't about being pro-life, this isn't about protecting the life of a zygote or an embryo, this is just about punishing women, and that's it. Let me give you more details. The proposed bill, the Abolition of Abortion Through Equal Protection for All Unborn Children Act, would have made it so that women who get abortions and physicians who perform them could be charged with homicide, which is punishable by the death penalty in the Lone Star State. Now, comparable bills, by the way, have been introduced in other states like Wisconsin, Alabama, and North Carolina. And who would support something like this? Well, one of the biggest proponents of this type of legislation is Texas State Representative Tony Tinderholt from Arlington. Tinderholt introduced similar bills in 2017 and in the 2019-2020 legislative session. In fact, he makes an argument for this type of legislation in the next video, which is from May of 2017.
Are you aware that state law currently says, according to Texas Penal Code 1.07, that an individual means human being who is alive, including an unborn child at every stage of gestation from fertilization until birth? What you're talking about is a horrific crime that no woman should ever have to deal with. But I want to cover the 5th and 14th Amendments. No person shall be deprived of life without due process of law. That's pretty important amendments because the children that are being aborted are, according to state law, they are life. I agree with you that every woman should have control of her body. But according to state law, and then according to the Constitution of the United States of America, that life inside the woman is a life of its own. And so my question to you is, I know we disagree on this topic. My question to you is, that child is not complicit with what that man did to that woman, which again, I want to reiterate is absolutely horrific. I could never imagine it. Do you take issue with two wrongs making a right?
In that video, he is arguing that a woman who got pregnant after being raped should not be allowed to get an abortion. That's specifically what he's referring to there. And there are major corporations, including AT&T, United Services Automotive Association, and others who have continued giving him money for his campaign despite this disgusting, egregious behavior.
He's so pro-life that his biggest corporate backer is Altria. That's a tobacco company that kills people for a living. Oh, I'm so pro-life. Get cancer, get cancer. I'm making money off of it. Get cancer. Oh, I'm so pro-life. Now they just look. You want to protect the so-called life that you're talking about. Well, if it's a life, that's okay. Actually, when it's a life, we agree. You can take it out and it'll be an independent life form.
Yeah, let's see a zygote be a viable outside the womb, and talk to me about how that is the same thing as a living, breathing human being. The same living, breathing human beings that members of his party, including himself, have no problem watching suffer on the streets, leaving them completely alone and helpless when they need government assistance. Like, these people do not care about people's lives at all. It's so clear.
Yeah, so after viability, everyone agrees, don't let Republicans lie to you, everybody agrees that at that point it's an independent life form and has its own rights. But before viability, it is 100% dependent on the mother, and the mother gets to choose what she wants to do with her body. If you say no, you should not choose what you get to do with your body. You have an obligation to that other life that is dependent on you. Well, okay, that's an interesting theory. So a lot of people need kidney transplants. The government's gonna come and take your kidney. What? The other person's gonna die. I'm pro-life. What? They're gonna die, and they're an actual person. So we're just gonna take your kidney. Well, why not? I mean, you don't have any bodily autonomy. We're taking away bodily autonomy from women. So why don't, and since we're taking it away from women in the case of abortion, why don't we take it away from men in the case of kidneys? So from now on, if anytime anybody needs a kidney, the government can seize your body and take it. What, are you against life? Oh, you don't like it when it's done to you.
Jake, you can't even get these clowns to wear a mask during a global pandemic. You can't get them to wear a mask. You can't get them to agree to vaccinations. Please don't come at me about how this is really about life and protecting life. This is not about life. This is about punishing women, period. End of story. And look, if you happen to be a religious person who, based on your religion, you're completely convinced that it's life at the moment of conception, great. That is your opinion. Don't have an abortion. But again, don't force that on everyone else. Don't force that on everyone else. And I do want to give some specifics in regard to these corporations that are funding the campaigns of just absolutely deplorable lawmakers like the individual we're talking about here. So Tinderholt's most notable donor, as Cenk had mentioned earlier, is Altria Group, and the giant tobacco company has given him a combined $3,000 since his first election, $2,000 of which was given in July of 2020 after he first introduced his bill. But make no mistake about it. I mean, the video that we showed you was from 2017. He has a long history of this type of belief that, women should be essentially punished, both after they get raped and they become pregnant from that rape, and if they happen to get an abortion because they don't want to carry that pregnancy to term. The United Services Automobile Association also donated to him to the tune of $1,000. Charter Communications, that's a big corporation. The parent company of the cable internet service provider Spectrum gave $1,000 to Tinderholt through its Texas PAC in the 2020 election cycle. And of course, there's also AT&T, which has given him a total of $1,500. AT&T reports that it gave Tinderholt $500 between July and December of 2020.
So I want to be clear, the companies are not giving them money just so they can take away women's rights. They're giving them money because of normal corruption. They're bribing them for legislative and regulatory actions in Texas. So AT&T is a very conservative company. They're the ones who funded OAN in the first place to do conservative propaganda on behalf of AT&T. And so they're saying, now remember, you're just an errand boy that works for us, okay? Oh, you hate women and want to murder them in certain situations? No problem, I don't care. As long as you give me my tax cuts and deregulate my industry, okay? And do as you're told.
By the way, deregulation worked out real well for Texas's privatized power grid, right, Cenk? That didn't lead to any deaths during a winter storm.
No, but corporations made money off that death, so
those
that's
deaths
totally
are
okay.
Those deaths are okay.
Those are okay.
Literally hundreds of people in Texas died. Yeah. Because of the fact that the privatized, deregulated power grid meant that they didn't weatherize their equipment, which means that there was all this malfunction happening during a severe winter storm.
So he said in that rant of his that, the United States Constitution says that it's a life form and must be protected. It doesn't say any such thing. He's absurd. He just made that up completely because Republicans lie all the time as a matter of course because they're used to never being checked by the press. And you want to talk about government tyranny. Government tyranny is not, hey, can you please put on a mask so you don't kill other people? And Republicans go, I don't care about killing people. I'll take my contagious disease and spread it all over you. I'm pro-life. Yeah, you're absurd. No, government tyranny is, I now possess your body. You are not allowed to do anything with your body that I don't sanction. And you are to be a vessel for the children that I want to bring into the world. But now, are they actually children? He says at the moment of fertilization, a lot of contraceptives work after fertilization. Does anyone think that those contraceptions like IUDs actually committed mass murder? No, no one actually believes that. Even the right-wingers don't believe that. On the other hand, they are proposing here to execute women who have been raped. Gee, I wonder what's worse. Contraception that ends a pregnancy after fertilization or murdering women after they've been raped? Mm-hmm. Government tyranny. What a bunch of liars the right wing are. They love government tyranny as long as it's on behalf of their view of fundamentalist religion.
All right, well, let's go over to Florida where there's more corruption taking place because of course, and this time it has to do with universities.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT, TYT.
The place is like 95% TYT on.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Cenk and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
All the people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think one side seems to be winning. They seem to have a bigger army. There might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
Across the map are going to be so tight and so close that it is likely going to be very difficult to call this on election night.
The twin forces behind the Biden candidacy, the billionaires and the Bolsheviks.
Arizona, 19 million. For the vice president, 9 million, a little over 9 million for President Trump.
We are desperate for Donald Trump to not be president anymore because he's fascist and is a threat to our democracy. And we said that from day one. Yes, we want Biden to beat Trump. Is that clear enough?
It is increasingly difficult for the American public to get any sort of truth.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that, people are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different ways. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry?
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is being accused of something pretty devastating, and it's being and it has to do with campaign corruption, campaign donations, which for the most part we've legalized that kind of bribery, and it's totally fine based on our laws. But what he's being accused of doing here is essentially pressuring members of university boards of trustees to give him money or else he won't reappoint them. So this was an accusation that was lodged against him by the current state agriculture commissioner, Nikki Fried. She's planning on running against him when he runs for re-election, so full disclosure on that. But it seems like there's some truth to her allegations. She says this: our current boards of trustees across the state were required to give a campaign contribution to Ron DeSantis in the amount of $100,000. And if they didn't give him the campaign contribution, they were not reappointed to the boards. That is what we are dealing with here in the state of Florida with this governor. Now, again, it is unfortunately perfectly legal to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to various politicians and then in return get all of these appointments, right? But in this case, threatening various people with their positions unless they give you money, that is not legal. Okay, so DeSantis's appointments are stacked with his biggest donors. And the boards of trustees are no different. DeSantis's corruption, according to a campaign spokesperson for Fried, knows no limits, even when it means compromising on Floridians' schools. And is there any truth to this? Well, when you look at some of these donations, it looks like there could be. For instance, at least 9 current members on boards of trustees across Florida's university system have made donations to DeSantis' 2022 campaign or other state GOP, either in their own name, through their company, or via spouse, according to state campaign finance records. So I think the best example is the University of South Florida's Leslie Muma. His wife actually gave $100,000 to DeSantis's campaign this year.
Nikki Fried says he asked for $100,000, and then look at that, he got $100,000. Probably a wild coincidence. So there's several layers of corruption here in the case of DeSantis, and he's done this many times. So when the vaccine first came out, you remember there were the stories where he got it to communities that had his largest donors first. He went out of his way to make sure they got the vaccine. After his rich donors were vaccinated, he then turned around and said, come on, who needs the vaccine and the mask and stuff? Let's not take any precautions. Who cares, right? But after all of his donors were taken care of. And this whole system is corrupt. No, you shouldn't make the board of trustees of universities weirdo, corrupt people who gave bribes to politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. And now, of course, leave it to DeSantis to take it to the next level and go, no, if you don't give it to me, I'm gonna kick you off the board. Which, by the way, you're such a knucklehead. That's illegal. You don't need, there's so many ways to get legal bribes. But power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Now, here are some other examples. Remember, there were professors who were supposed to testify in these lawsuits against the state's handling of coronavirus data. And before they were set to testify, all of a sudden, the universities prevented them from doing so. In late October, it became public that multiple professors from the University of Florida were restricted from participating in lawsuits against the state. University of Florida employees were told verbally not to criticize Governor Ron DeSantis or University of Florida policies related to COVID-19 in media interactions. And now there's an investigation in regard to that censorship, and we'll see where it ends up. But it is fascinating that these professors were essentially told, no, you're not allowed to testify in these lawsuits. You're not allowed to criticize Ron DeSantis. And honestly, it really doesn't surprise me. And to be sure, what we've seen with Governor Ron DeSantis in the state of Florida is just this firm grip on intellectual freedom, on the ability to get accurate and critical information out there to people so they can keep themselves safe during the coronavirus pandemic. And while people are literally dying in that state as a result of his corrupt leadership, he's deciding to focus all of his attention on anti-woke legislation, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, he's done several things against freedom of speech. They're Orwellian. They say our biggest issue is freedom of speech. We want to be able to say racist things. Then they turn around and go, COVID numbers, make sure the professors shut up. They're not allowed to talk about it at all. Okay, and now on race, no. We're gonna send vigilantes after teachers if they ever teach about racism, which is the next part of the story.
Now, Ron DeSantis has focused a lot of his energy on censoring any form of education that right-wingers might not like. And his latest play is in regard to woke culture. In fact, he is signing what's referred to as the Anti-Woke Act. He talks about it in more detail in this next clip.
So we are going to be including in this legislation giving parents a private right of action to be able to enforce the prohibition on CRT, and they get to recover attorney's fees when they prevail, which is very important. And here's the thing. A lot of times these people will fear lawsuits more than a fine from the State Department of Education, because when you do a lawsuit, you get discovery and you're subject to that. And when they say they're not doing CRT and then you have all this information showing that they are doing it.
So he explains what he would do, essentially empower lawsuits against educators who might have the audacity to teach students anything about American history that might hurt the feelings of incredibly delicate right-wingers in the state of Florida. And he goes further than that. DeSantis even name drops Martin Luther King while he's introducing his so-called anti-woke legislation.
You think about what MLK stood for. He said he didn't want people judged on the color of their skin, but on the content of their character. You listen to some of these people nowadays, they don't talk about that.
Oh, okay. I mean, he's quoting MLK, so I'm sure there's no bad intent here. I'm sure that this isn't about, erasing our history or pursuing revisionist history to, again, save the delicate feelings of right-wingers who don't want anyone to learn the truth about this nation's history.
So when they set the vigilantes on the teachers and say you'll be able to collect very large bounties if you turn in your teachers, they give vague instructions like if they're teaching critical race theory. Now, how does a sixth grader know if it's critical race theory or if they're just teaching about racism that happened in America, like slavery or Jim Crow? So what they're gonna do is they're gonna turn the kids against their teachers trying to collect big sums of money. By the way, that's what the Nazi youth did. They were instructed if the teachers are being disloyal to the Fuhrer to turn in your teachers. That's just a fact, you can look it up. So now in Florida, they say, turn in your teachers, good boys and girls. Now, if you hear anything about race at all, maybe you can get paid. They don't. So now you think it's just gonna be about critical race theory? No, about anything related to racism. They're gonna get sued. And what's gonna happen? The schools are gonna say we're running out of money. So please stop talking about race at all. Whitewash history and pretend there was no racism at all in America. By the way, this is the party of freedom of speech. Hilarious. Liars through and through, every one of them. They hate freedom of speech. So now he mentioned Martin Luther King as if Martin Luther King was a Republican who would have liked the laws that he's passing. Now, not only did Martin Luther King talk about the vicious, that's a quote, vicious racists in the South, he said it in his I Have a Dream speech. All that has been whitewashed. You could actually read the speech and you'll see it in there. But he also had this to say, and look at how telling this is. He said, whites, it must frankly be said, are not putting in a similar mass effort to re-educate themselves out of their racial ignorance. It is an aspect of their sense of superiority that the white people of America believe they have so little to learn. Martin Luther King said that, and that's the actual Martin Luther King. If you read the whole quote, he goes on and on about how white people want to bask in their ignorance and never want to talk about racism that is real.
Weird that he left that part out. Yeah.
It almost seems like when you're quoting Martin Luther King, you should know who he actually is. So they hate freedom of speech. They're authoritarian through and through, and now turning the students against their teachers is despicable.
That does it for our first hour, but do not miss our second hour where we will talk about probably the biggest loser in the world of real estate developers. And later in the show, we'll also talk about Jim Jones, getting real antsy about the fact that his text messages to Mark Meadows have now been revealed. What did he text him?
It's Jim Jordan, but I like this
What did I
Freudian
say?
slip of Jim Jones.
Oh damn! I didn't even realize I did that. I'm sorry. I totally misspoke. I didn't mean that. But that is funny. Yeah, Jim Jordan, not Jim Jones, who's also not a great guy. Anyway, we'll be back.
Patient. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box. But you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something, an idea. That truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it. And for a while, so did I. We could have stood united, a political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Cenk! No!
You began without me. You began without me. But God as my witness, I will be the one to finish it.
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
No, I did 100, 100, 100, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing
Zero
yourself.
cents, yeah.
When news is breaking, and when you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time. When news breaks, when news is breaking, and you like... When news is breaking, and you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time for Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, Carl Guy, Jared Heiser, Jay Ox, and James Kelly. Those are the good folks who just joined. We do the show with the members, and we couldn't do them without you guys. So hit the join button below on YouTube. Everybody else, tyt.com/join. And I want to give a quick shout out to Oddly Magical, who gifted 25 subs on Twitch. You're awesome. Thank you. Twitch.tv/TYT. We're still not banned there, so you can watch us, although they have wrongly banned others. All right.
All right. One of my favorite things to do is dunk on loser developers, so let's get right to it. Turns out that no one wants to buy a $500 million home atop a hill in Los Angeles. Maybe because that home was on the market for $500 million. Like, who has money for that? And now the developer, that genius developer who decided to build this and put it out there on the market, is defaulting on the loan that he needed in order to construct this monstrosity. Now look, I like homes. I like nice homes. Everyone likes nice homes. This home is laughable. Okay, so it's the largest modern home in America, and it could be auctioned off in January, starting at $250 million. Its owner told a US bankruptcy court official. So this is a situation where, because of the fact the developer had defaulted on the loan, he has to go through bankruptcy, okay? And so let me just make a serious point about this before we start dunking on this guy, which will be a lot of fun. Remember, students in this country who are drowning in student loan debt are not able to discharge their loans if they file for bankruptcy. Those loans will follow them for the rest of their lives. Their wages will be garnished. If a grandparent has co-signed on their student loans, the Social Security that their grandparents receive could be garnished. I mean, it is disastrous. But there's all these avenues in which the failures of these multi-billionaires, get forgiven. And so I'll give you some more details. The developer, Niall Naemi, his Crest Lloyd plans to hire 2 luxury home sellers to list the Bel Air mega mansion known as, it gets better, The One, for the price and help find bidders for the auction. Now, before we go on, I think it's important for you guys to get a visual of what this monstrosity looks like. So let's go to the video.
Niall would attempt to build the world's most expensive house ever. In total, the Bel Air mega mansion is over 100,000 square feet and looks as if it's floating above the city. On top of the eye-catching outer design, the one has 42 bathrooms, 21 bedrooms, a 10,000-bottle wine cellar, a 50-car garage, a 50-seat movie theater, a 4-lane bowling alley, a VIP nightclub, an outside running track, and 5 swimming pools. And this isn't even scratching the surface. The house has a cigar lounge, multiple art galleries, a 4,000 square foot guest house, tennis courts, a sprawling master bedroom, and even an anatomically correct giraffe skeleton. When it comes to the one, it's safe to say it's unlike anything ever built before.
I mean, an anatomically correct giraffe skeleton?
Tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich.
But even the rich aren't stupid enough to buy that house. That's the mistake that this developer made.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that in a second.
Yeah.
Several art galleries inside the house. Why do you need 42 bathrooms?
Especially when you only have 21 bedrooms.
Yeah, why do you need 2 bathrooms for every bedroom? Who could possibly use 42 bathrooms? Okay.
Or 5 pools. How about 1 pool? How about 2 pools? Let's go crazy. How about 2 pools? 5 pools for what? 5 pools for what? Like that.
Guys, the rich literally don't know what to do with their money. I thought it was going to be a dinosaur. It's a giraffe skeleton. So random. Oh, have you seen the downstairs art gallery? I do declare. Let's have a dip in the 3rd pool, and then perhaps you can use the 7th different bathroom on this trip. For what? Okay, anyway. So guys, the reason why it's not selling is supply and demand. At a $500 million price tag, there isn't that much demand because there are a number of wealthy folks who could afford that kind of a home, but they're not in the thousands. There are a handful of people who could afford a house that large. So if they already are satisfied with their $100 million homes, they might not need a $250 or $500 million home. So you're selling to a very, very small group. So if you screw it up at all and one of them doesn't buy it, well, then you're out a couple $100 million. Dude,
I love this story so much. So the developer is one thing, right? Because remember, of course, there are people who are gonna want loans for all sorts of bad ideas. That exists. And the question is, are there lenders stupid enough to believe in this project and loan hundreds of millions of dollars to develop this property? And so we now go to Hanky. Okay, Hanky is the lender here, and yes, Hanky is the name of the lender. The fate of the mansion, with its hilltop view of the Los Angeles basin and the Pacific Ocean, has been up in the air since Miami's Crest Lloyd defaulted last year on $106 million owed to Hanky, a hard money lender and real estate developer who made his fortune in subprime auto lending. Bad guys all around. Bad guys all around.
Totally.
Yeah. And so what is the developer now hoping for through this bankruptcy process? We're still going back and forth strategically speaking, but we anticipate that the listing price will be approximately $250 million, Crest Lloyd manager Lawrence Perkins told the court. Our goal is to run a thoughtful sale process to maximize the value from a small group of people in the world that can buy a property like this. And by the way, there is a lot of money laundering happening right now with foreign investors, and typically they launder their money through US real estate. I don't know if they might consider this a good deal, but the monstrosity is still, by the way, under construction. It's not finished. And so that was another question that came up through the bankruptcy, which is, well, are you guys gonna finish constructing this thing? And so it may take $10 million and as long as 12 months to repair and finish the 100,000 square foot home. Crest Lloyd had no plans to employ anyone, indicating it would be sold as is. Outside of court, Perkins said real estate experts who were consulted said any buyer would want to personalize the property, and therefore it made little sense to spend millions completing it.
Yeah, because no rich person is going to want to walk into that. This is not nearly sufficient. I need to personalize it. There's not nearly enough bathrooms in here. And I love that one of the things involved in this is named Hanky. I don't know if their partner's name is Panky. Okay, but it is quite fitting for the story. Look, last thing is, everybody that lives in LA looks at that and goes, just give it one good rainstorm, okay? And it's going to slide right down that hill. And then we're all gonna have the belly laugh of our lives.
I don't know about that. If that thing slides down the hill, there's a lot of people living down the hill.
I hear you. I hear you. A little schadenfreude though. But maybe that's what they meant by trickle-down economics. Okay, so these guys have the audacity to say, you can't raise taxes on the wealthy. Well, they're spending it all in the economy. Eventually it will trickle down on you guys. Does it look like that, or does it look like they're buying giraffe skeletons?
No, these are real job creators, which is important because we have about 60,000 homeless people on the streets of Los Angeles alone. So,
yeah,
great.
But a giraffe skeleton producer has one job. Okay, one extra job. Is there a big demand for that?
Well, we got to take a break, but when we come back, we'll move off of dunking on real estate developers to dunk on Jim Jordan in Congress. Come right back.
I've been a fan of TYT, I believe, for the last 6 years.
5 years.
3 years now. 7 years.
4 years now.
2.5 years. I just started because she got me into it.
My boyfriend actually watches it every morning and every night, so I kind of just started watching it with him, and I love it. I mean, it's the only way that I find my news.
Looking through YouTube, looking for political shows that look cool.
I came across a very angry rant from Cenk, and that's when I knew.
So I was immediately in love with the show.
And then I haven't missed a live show since then.
10 times a day, I watch the show in the morning.
Whenever I had a bad day at high school, Young Turks.
Man, Cenk is just so blunt and honest, and I love the honesty, and there's no BS behind the news, and they just tell everything like it is.
There's nobody censoring them. There's nobody there to say you can't do this, you can't say that.
That feel of authenticity makes it seem like what they're saying is true.
I feel like I get the real story from the Young Turks.
I am TYT.
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 Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Casper.
Text messages revealed by the January 6th Select Committee have made Republicans' flagrant disregard for democracy and the rule of law even more clear. Now, all of a sudden, we're getting a little more insight into what Representative Jim Jordan was texting former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows not as the riots were happening, but a day before the riots took place. So look, we already know about these Fox News anchors and even Don Jr. frantically texting Mark Meadows as the riots were taking place, urging him to do something, to essentially convince Donald Trump to stop the riots. And it would take him 187 minutes to do anything. But when it comes to the day before, here's what Jordan had texted. On January 6, 2021, on January 6, 2021, Vice President Mike Pence, as president of the Senate, should call out all the electoral votes that he believes are unconstitutional as no electoral votes at all. That's what he had texted him.
Okay, so guys, that's just saying, take the ceremonial role by the vice president and declare and just use it as a pretense to declare a dictatorship. Because the vice president has no constitutional authority to do that at all. This is an example I've used before. It's like getting mad at the guy throwing the opening pitch for not winning the game. He's not in the game. It's ceremonial. It's just an opening pitch. It doesn't mean anything. So and I can prove it, and even the right wingers will go, oh, okay, that's obviously true. Otherwise, any vice president can end democracy at any time, including Kamala Harris. So if Biden and Trump run against each other, and next time Trump wins, she could just go up there and go, I'm not counting the electoral votes. Jim Jordan told me not to. I have the power to do that. They say it's constitutional. It's absurd. It's nowhere in the Constitution. So I am now declaring Joe Biden the winner. Well, Republicans, do you want that? Or do you think that in the Constitution it says only Republican vice presidents can do it? I mean, you know that's absurd, right? And do you really want to give Kamala Harris that power? Do you want to give any vice president that power? That's not anywhere near a democracy.
Now, Jim Jordan clearly knows that this ain't a good look because he got defensive after these texts were read by the select committee. And Jordan's defense is not a good one. He claims, look, I know I sent that text message to Mark Meadows, but it wasn't really me. I was just relaying a message from someone else. Okay, so
what?
Yeah, I mean, it's the most ridiculous excuse imaginable. Jordan's office has confirmed that he was the sender, but emphasized that the message was merely the Ohioan forwarding analysis by another attorney, former Pentagon Inspector General Joseph Schmitz. Now, Schmitz is a conservative lawyer and a one-time national security advisor, which is kind of terrifying, actually, during the Donald Trump's 2016 campaign. Now, Mr. Jordan, according to a spokesperson for Representative Jordan, forwarded the text to Mr. Meadows, and Mr. Meadows certainly knew it was a forward. That doesn't matter at all. And by the way, that wasn't indicated in the text message. There was no indication that Jimbo was like, this isn't me, I'm just sharing analysis from someone else. There was no indication of that. So I just think it's a ridiculous excuse, but the fact that he's giving these excuses tells you a lot about how he, I think, recognizes what he was suggesting there is problematic.
Yeah, definitely. When the Schmitz hit the fan, all of a sudden he's like, it wasn't me. It wasn't me, it was Schmitz. It was Schmitty. Okay, so first of all, okay, now we know there are a bunch of people who hate America on the right wing and think, yeah, when it's not even given an opportunity, they just created an opportunity out of whole cloth to destroy the whole country and say that the vice president can be king. Everybody knows that isn't true. I bet you even some QAnon people go, well, that's a bridge too far, man. Because you have to admit, if that's true, Kamala Harris can declare Biden the winner no matter what. Okay, so, and by the way, Democrats have never made that point. They're such an incompetent party. But in terms of this whole forwarding is not necessarily me suggesting it. Why is Jim Jordan constantly forwarding TYT clips to the chief of staff for Trump? Like, hey, you never know. Like, maybe you should do what TYT says.
That's totally normal human behavior, right?
Yeah.
Like every time I forward you a message about a story we're gonna cover, I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting anything, I'm just, forwarding you other people's analysis that I might not even agree with.
Yeah, normally if you text something that you don't agree with, you go, this thing that kids call LOL, right? You say, oh, I don't agree with this, look at how absurd this is.
Exactly.
You don't send it over without the guy's name on it, without any commentary. Why are we having this discussion? Jim Jordan obviously wanted Pence to end the country and end our democracy.
But this does also shed some light on something that we talked about much earlier on the show. And it was the way that Jim Jordan had reacted to questions about his communication with Donald Trump on January 6th, right? His answer to that question, I don't know, he seemed a little flustered. And I want to bring that back to give you guys a reminder.
Yes or no, did you speak with President Trump on January 6th?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke with the president last week. I speak with the president all the time. I spoke with him on January 6th. I mean, I talk with President Trump all the time. And that's I don't think that's unusual. I'm actually kind of amazed sometimes that people keep asking this. But of course, I talk to the president all the time. I talk with him, like I said, I talked with him last week.
On January 6th, did you speak with him before, during, or after the Capitol was attacked?
I'd have to go. I spoke with him that day after.
He looks pretty damn nervous.
Oh, he looks super nervous. I mean, his voice was cracking.
I talk to the president all the time. I talked to him yesterday. I talked to him last week. I talked to him today. I mean, everybody talks to the president, right?
I talk to people. I talk to the coffee guy down the street. Okay, I talk to my wife. Can you believe that? Okay, and besides which, it was Schmitty. Schmitty called him. It wasn't me. Okay. Oh, so you know you're guilty.
He talks to everybody except for authorities after wrestlers come forward with sexual assault allegations.
Against one of his colleagues.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
All of a sudden, then he can't find a way to talk to anybody, and he just happens to cover up the sexual assault of young boys. Then he can't find any quotes from Schmitty to forward to anyone.
Can't find the words.
But all of a sudden, though, when you're trying to do a coup against America and destroy our democracy, then all of a sudden you got all the words you need. Hey, you know, why doesn't the vice president just cancel the votes and declare Trump the king? I mean, president, wink. No, Republicans who believe this are traitors to this country. Absolute traitors.
Speaking of traitors, Cenk, a traitor to your people, Dr. Oz. Let's talk about that. Uh-oh.
Patience. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box. But you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something, an idea. The truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it. And for a while, so did I. We could have stood united, a political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Jake! No!
You began without me. You began without me. But God as my witness, I will be the one to finish it.
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
I did 100, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
When news is breaking, and when you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time. When news breaks, when news is breaking, and you like. When news is breaking, and you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time for Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich.
Dr. Oz is running for office. In fact, he is a Senate candidate in Pennsylvania. And during a recent interview with Fox News, he was a little flustered when he was asked about his thoughts in regard to reproductive rights. Let's watch.
What is your position as both a doctor and a senatorial candidate on when life begins? When should we draw the line when abortion is legal?
As a doctor, I appreciate the sanctity of life. And for that reason, I'm strongly pro-life. With the 3 exceptions I've mentioned, that's how I would vote.
And when does that life begin?
You know, again, if I'm pro-life, then it's a decision that comes back to the sanctity of when you think life does begin. And I believe it begins when you're in the mother's womb.
When you're in the mother's womb, but that carries you all the way up to 9 months of pregnancy.
No, of course not. Life's already started when you're in your mother's womb. But it's a rat hole to get trapped in the different ways of talking about it. We need, as a nation, to make sure the Constitution is appropriately followed, and people like me, and you may be in the same camp, who are pro-life, have our feelings respected. And this is something that should not be taken away from us by judiciary legislating from the bench.
Yeah, but that's also something that's going to have to be legislated, and that answer is going to have to be given specifically.
Fumbling and bumbling. I learned nothing. If I knew nothing about Dr. Oz, I would have really no idea like where he stands on the issue. Because the fact of the matter is he's got a long track record in being in favor of a woman's right to choose, but now all of a sudden he's a candidate in Pennsylvania for a Senate seat, and he's on this Fox News interview, and he can't say that he believes in a woman's right to choose. So he's got to try to push this anti-abortion rhetoric, anti-choice rhetoric essentially, but doesn't really know how to do the maneuver necessary to get away with it.
If I didn't know anything about Dr. Oz, I would think he was a culinary expert with that wonderful word salad that he just created there. Mixing up that word salad. Well, the womb, it's, when you're in the womb. The womb is from fertilization to birth, so that gives us no answer at all. You didn't know that you were going to get asked this question when you're running as a Republican for a Senate seat. And you could tell that the prep they did was very poor, because I think the word rat hole probably comes from the prep session, right? That's not a thing you say on air, like, oh, we don't want to go down this rat hole. Like, probably in his prep sessions, they were like, oh, don't try to avoid that topic because it's a rat hole, okay? Right. And he wound up repeating that on air, when that is not how you're supposed to talk about the sanctity of the life at conception, et cetera.
No, I think he nailed it. I think he did a great job.
Oh yeah, brilliant. And so why is he trying to avoid the actual answer? Because if he says the right-wing position, which is life begins at conception, well, the three exceptions he talked about is very likely life of the mother and rape and incest, right? Well, then the Fox News host is going to turn around and go, well, if you think life starts at conception, who cares about rape? We have to protect the life anyway, right? So he's stuck, and he doesn't want to be stuck, and he doesn't actually have any principles around that issue at all. It's super obvious. He's just trying to find a way to maneuver so he can win the primary and then turn around and win the general election, because in order to win a primary in a Republican primary, you have to be a lunatic to win it. Oh, Trump's awesome. Screw democracy. I hate it. Oh yeah, women just use their bodies as chattel. Who cares about them? But in Pennsylvania, it's a blue to purple state. You're gonna have to win the general election, and that kind of radical talk is not gonna help you. Hence the word salad.
Yes. Now, it's really hard to tell what he genuinely believes, because clearly he's just going in whatever direction he feels would be beneficial for his political future, his career. Seems like that's the only thing he cares about. But we should take a look at his previous statements in regard to reproductive rights. He was a little clearer then. So I take you to his statements from 2 years back. Here's what he had to say. It's, as a doctor, just putting my doctor hat on, it's a big time concern, because I went to medical school in Philadelphia and I saw women who had coat hanger events. And I mean really traumatic events that happened when they were younger, before Roe v. Wade, and many of them were harmed for life. So he's talking about the negative ramifications of doing away with reproductive rights and a woman's right to choose. He has seen it firsthand as a doctor, and how awful it is when a woman is so desperate that she resorts to a coat hanger to do an abortion on herself. Women died as a result of that. He knows that. But he's so concerned with his own political career that he's willing to just honestly betray everything that he used to say, everything that he allegedly believed, in pursuit of his political career. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. And honestly, look, maybe I'm being a little too tough on Dr. Oz, but this is the problem with politics in America. You have all of these narcissistic, self-interested clowns running not because they want to represent the best interest of a goddamn person, but themselves. That's it. It's all about themselves. Over and over again. It's not just about Dr. Oz, it's about all these politicians that we currently have in Congress, and politicians, aspiring politicians who are going to run these campaigns. Here's another statement. just being logical about it, if you think that the moment of conception you've got a life, then why would you even wait 6 weeks, right? Then an in vitro fertilized egg is still a life. There's so much we gotta do already to take care of each other. To start picking fights on this, I always wonder about it. It happens periodically. There are these moral issues that almost on purpose are inflamed. He said that on the Breakfast Club radio show.
Okay, yeah, so he's full of crap. He was pro-choice, he's now pretending to be pro-life, and fame is a hell of a drug. He's got so much money, so much fame, so much power. Why? Why do you have to debase yourself to do this? You know, look, now he's in the party of Trump and seems to be supporting Trump. Trump back in 2016 when he was running for office said there should be a ban on Muslims entering the country. A total and complete shutdown. Dr. Oz is Muslim, he's Turkish. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll betray my own, who cares? Fame, fame precious. It's disgusting. Look, I've told you this before for those who watch regularly. Dr. Oz is actually an amazing surgeon. He's one of the best heart surgeons in the country. And he actually did heart surgery on my uncle. And so I feel terrible saying this, but we were all so proud of him when he was a heart surgeon. Then he goes on TV and becomes Gollum. And now he's doing anti-vaccine stuff, humiliating himself and anyone who believed in him. And so it's just uncomfortable to look at. And by the way, there's one other random note here. I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but Dr. Oz apparently doesn't live in Pennsylvania, and you got to be at least in the same state, right? And so I don't know if he got past that and somehow, but that was a controversy around this race. But I thought, why run in Pennsylvania? How weird, right? Fethullah Gulen, the Turkish Muslim fundamentalist, also lives in Pennsylvania.
Damn, Cenk, you always drop in that Turkish knowledge. I love it. No, tell us more. That's fascinating.
So that's the guy that Erdogan thinks did the coup against him, organized the coup in Turkey. Now that was a bunch of years back. America will not turn Gulen over to Erdogan. Some have speculated about whether he's a government asset for America, right? And so I thought it was curious that of all the states, Dr. Oz was like, and Dr. Oz is a supporter of Erdogan.
Oh.
Okay, so now he's going to try to become a senator from Pennsylvania.
Is Dr. Oz a supporter of anything, really? Other than Dr. Oz?
Well, Erdogan's in power in Turkey, hence he's a supporter of Erdogan. Does he actually believe that? Who knows?
Who knows?
Fame, it's a hell of a drug.
All right. There's a Smirkanish video I wanted to get to, but we gotta go. Anyway, all right, let's go. We gotta take a break. When we come back, a disastrous pregnancy announcement, probably one of my favorite stories of the day. Also, a way of duking it out in regard to political disagreements that I think I could maybe get behind. I've got that story and more when we come back.
Are you apologizing with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding. Because this is C-SPAN, and anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a Velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a call us now at Simon Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but
But then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. News.
All right. Last weekend, two Brazilian politicians who were having a difficult time agreeing on a big political issue decided to settle their differences in a literal cage fight. And honestly, I'm here for it. I think it's an honest way of duking it out in politics. And I do want to give you some context into what was going on. Apparently, the two were fighting about a what were they fighting about again?
A water park.
Water park, yeah. Actually, it's not really that important.
Well, maybe it is to the area, but like, I in a sense, I like that they got emotional. But overall, yeah. I'm against this. Although, ironically, I proposed this.
But yes. Like, raging waters, raging waters. So here are the two politicians who did this, not just to settle the score, but more importantly, this was also part of a fundraiser. So that's relevant as well. Let's watch. Hot.
Well, look, so that portion of the video is almost unfair to them. That's when they got tired and they're swinging wildly.
I think that looked pretty good.
That didn't even look that bad. I watched the beginning of the fight.
Yeah.
And I was like, they're actually pretty good.
Dude, we're Americans. Our members of Congress are like approximately 85 years old. And I'm not trying to be an ageist. I'm just keeping it real. You ain't gonna see members of US Congress engaging in a fundraiser cage fight. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, and so you're right, Anna, because the very first thing I thought when I started watching the fight is, man, they're young. Because our donors, our donor class, which runs this country, likes that they have politicians that are safe return on investment. That's why they stay around till they're 85, because the donors can bank on them. They know when I bought Mitch McConnell, he stayed bought. A new guy, I don't know. Yeah, a lot of them are progressive, and I'm not sure that I can get good return on investment. Whereas Pelosi and Schumer and McConnell have been delivering for me for decade after decade. That's why we have old politicians. Anyway, back to Brazil. Look, politicians kicking the crap out of each other is not a good way to settle policy issues, okay? And the core of it was the water park. By the way, to this day, the reporters didn't clarify whether they're gonna get the water park or not. And one of these guys is a mayor of a major city in Brazil.
Okay, yeah, let me actually give you guys a little more context, because there's details that you should know about. So the MMA match pitted Simão Pixoto, a 39-year-old mayor, against former councilor Irenu Alves de Silva, age 45. The two had been feuding over a water park project and taking shots at each other in the local press and social media for months. And then finally, they decided the best way to settle their beef was a good old-fashioned fight. Now, de Silva was actually furious at the failure to preserve a water park near a river, and so he challenged the mayor to this good old-fashioned fist fight. But there was also a fundraising component to it as well, right? I actually don't really have a problem with this at all. I actually think this is a lot of fun. It's not like they're fighting in the streets. This is a controlled environment. They're having fun. They both consented to doing it. I just think it makes the situation a lot more interesting.
Well, I hear you on that. That's why I proposed it a couple of times. But on the other hand, they are punching each other in the face. And so that is problematic. Although if it happened in America between Republicans and Democrats would immediately pin themselves and rush to the floor and tap out. So it wouldn't be much of a fight. Okay, so I mentioned I proposed this a couple of times. One was with Michael Smerconish way back in the day on HuffPost, and there was a reason why I did it. I said, look, I'd rather debate you, but you keep talking about the wussification of America. He kept nonstop saying that back when he was a right-winger. Now he's pretending to be independent to get a job at CNN. Anyways.
You're such a hater. You're such a Smerconish hater.
Yeah, wussification. And I was like, all right, Michael, no problem at all. I could debate you on that. Or if you want and you think we're such wussies, us on the left, let's step into the ring, okay? Sanction, not any vigilante nonsense. No, sanction ring, because you're so tough. And we're such wussies, it'll be really easy for you. You know what he did? This is a true story. He went and cried to mommy, which in that case was Ariana Huffington. He said, Jake challenged me to a fight. He says I'm the wussy. And tried to get me kicked off of Huffington Post.
That is actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
And a bad look for Smerconish.
Yeah, that's because apparently he's a wussy.
Yeah.
And so, and some of you might have heard I did something similar with Joe Rogan, because they're not actually tough guys. They're playing tough guys, right?
I don't know. I think Rogan's a little different from Smerconish.
Yeah, definitely. Smerconish, no question, ran instantly to mommy.
Yes.
And he was clinging onto her skirt. Please save me, mommy, please. Rogan's taking another tack. But look, guys, that's the point. Isn't the fight? And I'm against the politicians fighting in this case. The point is to point out that they're not the tough guys. They all, oh yeah, if you're manly, you don't take a vaccine. If you're manly, you don't listen to doctors. What do doctors and scientists know? You listen to meatheads. All right, we can settle it in an intellectual way, or if you want, we can settle it in a meathead way. I'm good with either. But you don't own this whole idea of masculinity. You're clowns. So, but in this case, it's over a water park, so it didn't really have anything to do with proving that either side doesn't have a monopoly on masculinity.
Can we just take a look at the promotional image for the event? This was what they put out prior to the fight taking place, obviously. And I'm just amazed by all of this. Like, it's just so different from what we're used to. Can you imagine any one of our politicians shirtless, like posing in a picture like that?
Please no.
God, it would be a disaster.
Picture Mitch McConnell.
Oh God, I was gonna say, imagine like Paul Gosar. Oh, he looks like, if Satan existed, I would imagine he would look like Paul Gosar.
Or Kenneth Copeland, that prosperity preacher.
Oh, totally, totally.
Anyways, so guys, look, understand whenever the right wing does all that tough guy talk, they never mean it. They're all posers, okay? And that's why I do the challenges that I do to expose them, because I'm tired of the Democrats constantly asking for apologies instead of fighting back. But you should keep it political in the real world.
All right, well, let's move on to our next story.
Patience. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box. But you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something, an idea. The truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it. And for a while, so did I. We could have stood united, a political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Jake! No!
You began without me. You began without me. But God as my witness, I will be the one to finish it.
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
I did 100, 100, 100, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing
0
yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
When news is breaking, and when you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time. When news breaks, when news is breaking, and you like. When news is breaking, and you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time for Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich.
Ladies, if you are considering a creative way of announcing your pregnancy to your partner, you better be careful, because if you're not, you're in trouble. We have an example. Let's watch.
Why is it so hard?
Because it got butter on it. It got
butter should make it soft, though.
No, I'm saying it got butter, so it shouldn't be that hard. I don't know why my mom is calling me that.
Why? What is that?
Baby.
What is that?
What it look like?
Why is it my food? Bro,
It's a test. It's a pregnancy test.
What that mean? You pregnant?
Baby, yes. I just wanted to like surprise you.
But why you mess up my food with that?
Baby.
Bro, I was just finna eat good, bro. You just put that.
Damn, you sound like you not.
Bro, it's on there.
It's not. It's the drop kind.
It's that go in there though. I know it's. Bro, that's how y'all get tested.
But it's not that kind though. Like why? Like you just ruined the whole.
You ruined my food.
That did not go well. We're gonna ask you guys a poll question about who was in the wrong here.
It's a tough one. Look, I know that I have sympathy for the pregnant woman in the story, of course, but it doesn't matter if it was the drop kind of pregnancy test. It still involves urine. You gotta find a better way of letting the guy know. He was really looking forward to those waffles. And I personally know what it's like to look forward to a specific meal. And if anything gets in my way of having that meal, I will be grumpy. Even if the thing that gets in the way is good news, okay? Like you wanna interrupt me when I'm about to dig in with like an announcement about like a pay raise? Don't do it. Let me eat first.
Okay, well.
I'm kidding. Definitely tell me about the pay raise. Like immediately. Interrupt everything I'm doing.
Don't worry, not gonna happen. No, just kidding. Okay, so listen guys, it's tyt.com/polls. Whose side are you on? OMG hers, he doesn't even care about the baby. Or OMG his, she put a pea stick in his waffles. Now, good arguments on both sides. I'm going with it's more his fault. Okay, and I'll tell you why, okay? Yeah, all right, it was a spectacularly bad idea to put that in the waffles, okay? But you're losing focus here, man. The waffles are a tiny issue. You're having a baby is a massive issue, okay? Like, I need you to concentrate. Like, oh man, you should have put it in the waffles, but oh my God, we're pregnant, holy cow, right? That's the proper reaction. And then you can come back to it a little later and go, next time, maybe not in the food.
So the problem is you're making a lot of assumptions here, and I don't appreciate it.
Oh, fascinating.
So the big assumption is that they were both trying, they both really wanted to have a baby, and it would be something that would make him excited, right? What if he's not excited about having a baby?
No, I totally get it. And what he might be doing there is using the waffles as a way to vent.
The waffles might be the scapegoat.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was my first instinct too. I get it. But my point is, he's missing the larger news event, right? Or he's trying to misdirect because he doesn't want to talk about the larger news event.
He just looks super disappointed all around. Like, and kind of being, maybe I'm being a little too unfair to the woman here, but I also have a problem with her. Look, we're talking about it on the show, so I guess my problem with this isn't too big, but she put this online, which is why we know about it, and that baby's gonna be born one day, that baby's gonna be able to use the internet one day, and I feel kind of bad for that kid who's gonna see this reaction from his father. Or her father, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that too, but Like if the kid's like, Dad, concentrate, okay? Stop it with the damn waffles. On the other hand, it really was a bad idea. Right? To put it in the waffles.
And look, we did a thorough investigation into this story because you should know the difference between the pregnancy tests that are out there, and the one that she referred to is the drop kind. Honestly, I didn't know what that meant, but here's what it is. Our super producer, Kate, looked into it. This is a drop kind pregnancy test. And essentially you use a literal dropper to drop urine into the circle portion. There you go, you can see it. You drop the urine into the circle collection well of the pregnancy test or pregnancy stick, and it still involves urine. So I totally get why he was irritated with, the urine infested waffle.
Yeah, it's still not as bad as the gender reveals where they blow up like rivers and
start wildfires.
Giant fires and stuff. But this is a new thing, pregnancy reveals. Put it in awkward places. Don't, by the way. Okay, as you saw there, sometimes it doesn't end well. Hopefully they recovered. And hopefully they're happy now.
Our investigation continues, but I do want to note that the Reddit community largely agrees with me. Let's go to some of the comments. One person writes, I don't blame him. There's literal on that, and he's eating pee on that, and he's eating food. It's one of his favorite comfort foods.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Focus, there's a baby coming. It'll affect your life 1 billion times more than that waffle, for better or for worse. Okay, all right, guys. We've got Power Hour coming up next with Nina Turner. We always do heroes and villains. She's got a particularly bad villain this week. But also, what would Nina do if she was an activist? How do you get Biden to do the right thing on student loan debt? TYT.com/join or hit the join button below on YouTube. We'll see you there in a minute.
I've been at TYT, I believe, for the last 6 years.
5 years.
3 years now. 7 years.
4 years now.
2.5 years. I just started because she got me into it.
My boyfriend actually watches it every morning and every night, so I kind of just started watching it with him, and I love it. I mean, it's the only way that I find my news.
Looking through YouTube, looking for political shows that look cool.
I came across a very angry rant from Cenk, and that's when I knew.
So I was immediately in love with the show.
And then I haven't missed a live show since then.
10 times a day, I watched the show in the morning. Whenever I had a bad day at high school, Young Turks.
Man, Cenk is just so blunt and honest, and I love the honesty, and there's no BS behind the news, and they just tell everything like it is.
There's nobody censoring him. There's nobody there to say you can't do this, you can't say that.
That feel of authenticity makes it seem like what they're saying is true.
I feel like I get the real story from the Young Turks.
I am TYT.
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 Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.